Hamelin town's in Brunswick by famous Hanover City. The river Weser, deep and wide, washes its wall on the southern side. A pleasanter spot you never spied. But when begins my ditty, almost 500 years ago, to see townsfolk suffer so from vermin was a pity. Rats! They fought the dogs and killed the cats and bit the babies in the cradles and ate the cheeses out of the vats and licked the soup from the cook's own ladles, split open the kegs of salted sprats, made nests inside men's Sunday hats, and even spoiled the women's chats by drowning their speaking with shrieking and squeaking in 50 different shops and flats. At last, the people in a body to the town hall came flocking. "'Tis clear," cried they, "our mayor's a noddy. And as for our corporation, shocking to think we buy gowns lined with ermine for dolts that can't or won't determine what's best to rid us of our vermin. Rouse up, sirs. Give your brains a racking to find the remedy we're lacking, or, sure as fate, we'll send you packing." At this, the mayor and corporation quaked with a mighty consternation. An hour they sat in council. At length, the mayor broke silence. "It's easy to bid one rack one's brain. I'm sure my poor head aches again. I've scratched it so and all in vain. Oh, for a trap, a trap, a trap." Just as he said this, what should hap at the chamber door but a gentle tap? "Bless us," cried the mayor, "what's that? Only a scraping of shoes on the mat? Anything like the sound of a rat makes my heart go pit-a-pat." "Come in," the mayor cried, looking bigger. And in did come the strangest figure. His queer long coat from heel to head was half of yellow and half of red. And he himself was tall and thin, with sharp blue eyes, each like a pin, and light, loose hair, yet swarthy skin, no tuft on cheek or beard on chin, but lips where smiles went out and in. There was no guessing his kith and kin, and nobody could enough admire the tall man in his quaint attire. He advanced to the council table. "Please, your honors," said he, "I'm able, by means of a secret charm, to draw all creatures living beneath the sun that creep or swim or fly or run after me, so as you never saw. And I chiefly use my charm on creatures that do people harm, the mole and toad and newt and viper, and people call me the Pied Piper." And here they noticed round his neck a scarf of red and yellow stripe to match with his coat of the self-same check. And at the scarf's end hung a pipe. And his fingers, they noticed, were ever straying, as if impatient to be playing upon this pipe, as low it dangled over his vesture so old-fangled. "Yet," said he, "poor piper as I am, in Tartary I freed the Cham last June from his huge swarms of gnats. I eased in Asia the Nizam of a monstrous brood of vampire bats. And as for what your brain bewilders, if I can rid your town of rats, will you give me 1,000 guilders?" "One! 50,000 was the exclamation of the astonished mayor and corporation. Into the street the piper stepped, smiling first a little smile, as if he knew what magic slept in his quiet pipe the while. Then, like a musical adept, to blow the pipe his lips he wrinkled, and green and blue his sharp eyes twinkled like a candle flame where salt is sprinkled. And ere 3 shrill notes the pipe uttered, you heard as if an army muttered. And the muttering grew to a grumbling, and the grumbling grew to a mighty rumbling, and out of the houses the rats came tumbling. Great rats, small rats, lean rats, brawny rats, brown rats, black rats, gray rats, tawny rats, grave old plotters, gay young friskers, fathers, mothers, uncles, cousins, cocking tails and pricking whiskers, families by tens and dozens, brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, followed the piper for their lives. from street to street he piped advancing, and step for step they followed dancing, until they came to the river Weezer, wherein all plunged and perished, save one, who, stout as Julius Caesar, swam across and lived to carry to Ratland home his commentary, which was,
"At the first shrill notes of the pipe, I heard a sound as of scraping tripe, and putting apples wondrous ripe into a cider press's gripe. And it seemed as if a voice called out, 'Ooh, rats rejoice!' And just as a bulky sugar puncheon already staved like a great sun shone glorious scarce an inch before me, just as my thought said, 'Come o'er me,' I found the Weezer rolling o'er me."
You should have heard the Hamelin people ringing the bells till they rocked the steeple. "Go," cried the mayor, "and get long poles. Poke out the nests and block up the holes. Consult with carpenters and builders and leave in our town not even a trace of the rats." When suddenly, up the face of the piper perked in the marketplace with a, "First, if you please, my 1,000 guilders." 1,000 guilders! The mayor looked blue. So did the corporation, too. To pay this sum to a wandering fellow with a gypsy coat of red and yellow? "Beside," quoth the mayor with a knowing wink, "our business was done at the river's brink. We saw with our eyes the vermin sink, and what's dead can't come to life, I think. So, friend, we're not the folks to shrink from the duty of giving you something for drink, and a matter of money to put in your poke, but as for the guilders, what we spoke of them, as you very well know, was in joke. Beside, our losses have made us thrifty. 1,000 guilders. Come, take 50. The piper's face fell, and he cried, "No trifling. I can't wait. Beside, I've promised to visit by dinner time Baghdad, and accept the prime of the head cook's pottage. All he is rich in, for having left in the caliph's kitchen of a nest of scorpions no survivor. With him I prove no bargain driver. With you, don't think I'll bait a stiver. And folks who put me in a passion may find me piped to another fashion." "Ha, ha, ha," cried the mayor. "Do you think I'll brook being worse treated than a cook? Insulted by a lazy ribald with idle pipe and vesture piebald? You threaten us, fellow? Do your worst. Blow your pipe there till you burst." Once more he stepped into the street, and to his lips again laid his long pipe of smooth, straight cane. And ere he blew 3 notes, such sweet, soft notes as yet musicians cunning never gave the enraptured air, there was a rustling that seemed like a bustling of merry crowds justling at pitching and hustling. Small feet were pattering, wooden shoes clattering, little hands clapping and little tongues chattering. And like fowls in a farmyard when barley is scattering, out came the children running. All the little boys and girls with rosy cheeks and flaxen curls and sparkling eyes and teeth like pearls, tripping and skipping, ran merrily after the wonderful music with shouting and laughter. The mayor was dumb, and the council stood as if they were changed into blocks of wood, unable to move a step, or cry to the children merrily skipping by, and could only follow with the eye that joyous crowd at the piper's back. But how the mayor was on the rack and the wretched council's bosoms beat as the piper turned from the high street to where the Weezer rolled its waters right in the way of their sons and daughters. However, he turned from south to west, and to Koppelberg Hill his steps addressed, and after him the children pressed. Great was the joy in every breast. He never can cross that mighty top. He's forced to let the piping drop, and we shall see our children stop. When lo, as they reached the mountain's side, a wondrous portal opened wide, as if a cavern was suddenly hollowed, and the piper advanced and the children followed. And when all were into the very last, The door in the mountainside shut fast. Did I say all? No. One was lame and could not dance the whole of the way. And in after years, if you would blame his sadness, he was used to say, "It's dull in our town since my playmates left. I can't forget that I'm bereft of all the pleasant sights they see, which the piper also promised me. For he led us," he said, "to a joyous land joining the town and just at hand, where waters gushed and fruit trees grew, and flowers put forth a fairer hue, and everything was strange and new. The sparrows were brighter than peacocks here, and their dogs outran our fallow deer, and honeybees had lost their stings, and horses were born with eagle's wings. And just as I became assured my lame foot would be speedily cured, the music stopped, and I stood still and found myself outside the hill, left alone against my will, to go now limping as before and never hear of that country more. Alas, alas for Hamelin. The mayor sent east, west, north, and south to offer the piper by word of mouth, wherever it was men's lot to find him, silver and gold to his heart's content, if he'd only return the way he went and bring the children behind him. But then they saw 'twas a lost endeavor, and piper and dancers were gone forever. They wrote the story on a column, and on the great church window painted the same, to make the world acquainted how their children were stolen away. And there it stands to this very day. And I must not omit to say that in Transylvania, there's a tribe of alien people that ascribe the outlandish ways and dress, on which their neighbors lay such stress, to their fathers and mothers having risen out of some subterraneous prison, into which they were trepanned long time ago in a mighty band out of Hamelin town in Brunswick land. But how or why, they don't understand. So, Willie, let you and me be wipers of scores out with all men, especially pipers. And whether they pipe us free from rats or from mice, if we've promised them aught, let us keep our promise.
Here's the story of a very polite young fellow who sometimes gets a bit bored with it all. If people ask me, I always tell them quite well, thank you, I'm very glad to say. If people ask me, I always answer quite well, thank you, how are you today? I always answer, I always tell them if they ask me politely. But sometimes I wish that they wouldn't. One day, Christopher Robin started wheezing and sneezing, so they sent him to bed and called the doctors. They examined him for measles and sneezles and wheezles and feezles and... Well, let me tell you about it. Christopher Robin had weasels and sneezles. They bundled him into his bed. They gave him what goes with a cold in the nose and some more for a cold in the head. They wondered if weasels could turn into measles, if sneezles would turn into mumps. They examined his chest for a rash and the rest of his body for swelling and lumps. They sent for some doctors and Sneezles and Weasels to tell them what ought to be done. All sorts and conditions of famous physicians came hurrying round at a run. They all made a note of the state of his throat, and they asked if he suffered from thirst. They asked if the Sneezles came after the Weasels, or if the first Sneezles came first. They said if you teasel a Sneezle or Weasel, a measle may easily grow. But humor or pleasel a Weasel or Sneezle, the measle will certainly go. They expounded the reasons for Sneezles and Weasels, the appearance of measles when new. And they said if he freezles in draughts and in breezels, the feasels may even ensue. Christopher Robin got up in the morning, the Sneezles had vanished away, and the look in his eye seemed to say to the sky, now how to amuse them today. I have a favorite place where I like to be. Let me tell you where it is. Halfway down the stairs is a stair where I sit. There isn't any other stair quite like it. I'm not at the bottom, I'm not at the top. So this is the stair where I always stop. Halfway up the stairs isn't up and isn't down. It isn't in the nursery, it isn't in the town. And all sorts of funny thoughts run round my head. It isn't really anywhere, it's somewhere else instead. It isn't really anywhere, it's somewhere else instead. This is a story about 4 friends. Ernest the elephant, Leonard the lion, George the goat, and James, who was only a tiny snail. Ernest was an elephant, a great big fellow. Leonard was a lion with a 6-foot tail. George was a goat and his beard was yellow. And James was a very small snail. Leonard had a stall and a great big strong one. Ernest had a manger and its walls were thick. George found a pen, but I think it was the wrong one. And James sat down on a brick. Ernest started trumpeting and cracked his manger. Leonard started roaring and shivered his stall. James gave the huffle of a snail in danger, and nobody heard him at all. Ernest started trumpeting and raised such a rumpus. Leonard started roaring and trying to kick. James went a journey with a goat's new compass and reached the end of his brick. Ernest was an elephant and very well-intentioned. Leonard was a lion with a brave new tail. George was a goat, as I think I've mentioned. But James was only a snail.
Once upon a time, there were 4 little brown rabbits. Their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter, and they lived with their mother in a warm, snug hollow at the foot of the big fir tree in the woods. There she kept them brushed and washed, with their whiskers standing straight and fine as a rabbit's whiskers should. "Now, my dears," said Mrs. Rabbit one fine spring day, "out of doors you go. You may play in the lane, or you may run about in the fields, but don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Your poor papa had an accident there. He was caught and put into a pie by Mrs. McGregor."
So run along, take care of each other, but don't get into mischief. Now, Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail were good little rabbits. Their brown coats were smooth and sleek, their little pink paws were clean, and they carried their willow baskets neatly over their arms. Mother Rabbit had said they might pick some blackberries if they saw them by the roadside, but they were to do only as she told them. So they went down the lane, and when they saw some blackberry bushes, they immediately set to work filling their little baskets. But not Peter. He was a very naughty rabbit. As soon as he was sure that they would not see him, he scampered ahead and ran across the fields, right across the green grass, down by the stream, and then up the hill again, right towards Mr. McGregor's garden. There he squeezed himself under the fence and saw before him rows and rows of fresh green vegetables. There were bright orange carrots and green peas and red radishes and white onions. And there was just the kind of crispy green lettuce that Peter liked best. So Peter started in to eat. He ate and he ate and he ate and he ate until his little white fur stomach was round and full and the tip of his pink nose could hardly wiggle. And when he stopped eating, he knew that he had eaten much too much. He'd better nibble a little parsley to make him feel good. So off he went, looking for parsley. But just as he went round the cucumber frame, whom do you think he saw? It was Mr. McGregor. At first, Mr. McGregor didn't see Peter. He was too busy putting in new cabbage plants. He was digging in the dirt and putting in the plants very, very carefully. But all of a sudden, he looked over his shoulder and saw Peter standing there. Up he jumped with a rake in one hand and a flower pot in the other, and he called out, "Stop! Stop!" And he began to run after Peter as fast as he could. Oh, Peter was dreadfully frightened. Shivers ran up and down his back. He ran this way and ran that way, and then he found that he was running around in circles. Oh, he was so frightened. His ears stood up straight in the air, and try as he would, he could not find his way out of the garden. On and on he ran, losing first one shoe among the green beans and then the other among the radishes. Before he knew it, he had run right into a gooseberry net and was caught fast by the buttons on his jacket. It was a beautiful new jacket. It had big shining buttons all the way down the front. His mother had just made it for him, and today was the very first time he had worn it. Peter wriggled and wriggled, trying to get out of the net. He soon found the more he wriggled and the more he squirmed, the tighter it held him. Big tears welled up in his eyes and plopped off the end of his unhappy pink nose. Oh, how could he ever get free before Mr. McGregor caught him? Two little sparrows came twittering by. They told him first to push with his foot and then pull as hard as he could. "That's it. Keep trying," they chirped. So Peter pushed and pulled as hard as he could. He was just about to get free when he saw Mr. McGregor coming behind him with a big net in his hand, which he was going to drop over Peter's head. The sparrows flew around and around in circles and chirped, "Pull, Peter, kick with your feet and you'll get free." Then he gave one push harder than all the rest and wriggled out just in time. But he left his little blue jacket behind him. Off he ran down the garden path. He didn't even stop for a moment to nibble at the carrots or peas. He knew that Mr. McGregor was chasing him and that he still had the big net in his hand. He scampered between the rows of beans as fast as he could go and went straight to the little house where all the garden tools were kept. "I'll run in and hide," he said to himself. "Mr. McGregor won't think of looking there, and I'll be safe enough until he goes." So he ran through the door with a flip of his little white tail. There, standing in the middle of the floor, was a big green watering can. Peter didn't even wait to see if it had any water in it. He just gave an extra big jump and landed plop right inside. He found himself up to his neck in water. Before he had time to jump out again, in came Mr. McGregor, looking for Peter everywhere. That's funny," said Mr. McGregor. "I'm sure I saw that silly brown rabbit run in here.
I'll find him in no time, and he'll be sorry he ever came into my garden. Every time I catch a rabbit eating my new carrots and beans, I take him home and put him into a rabbit pie." Peter shivered a little when he heard this. He remembered what his mother had said. He certainly didn't want to be popped into a pie and cooked for dinner. Mr. McGregor began turning all the flower pots upside down, looking for Peter's soft brown ears. All of a sudden, Peter sneezed. "Achoo!" He couldn't help it because the cold water was trickling down his neck. Of course, Mr. McGregor heard him and was after him in no time. But Peter gave a big jump to the windowsill, knocking over all the flower pots as he went by. Oh, Mr. McGregor was mad, and he stopped to pick up the pieces, so Peter got away completely. He ran as fast as he could until he was all out of breath. His little heart was bumping and thumping like an engine under his brown fur coat. Oh, but after he had rested a while, it was no louder than a soft pitter-patter. Then Peter began to look about him. Across the garden he saw a wall with a door in it. If he could only squeeze under that wall, he would be off on the road to home in no time. He could see the lane going straight back to the big woods. All he had to do was follow it, and he would be safe at home again. So over he ran and peeked under. He saw a little mouse come by carrying a fat green bean in her mouth. Peter asked her if there was any other way for him to go home, but she had such a big bean in her mouth that she only looked at him and went on without answering. Peter suddenly felt so sad he began to cry. He was very far from home and it would soon be growing dark. So he tried to find another way out of the garden. One path led him to the pool where the white cat sat watching the goldfish. Peter remembered what he had heard about cats liking to catch little brown rabbits, so he carefully crept away. Then he heard the scratch, scratch, scratch of Mr. McGregor's hoe nearby. Quickly he jumped into a wheelbarrow and peeped over the edge. Yes, there was Mr. McGregor hoeing his onions, and beyond him was the open gate that would take Peter from the garden back to the woods. Peter's whiskers quivered a little, and he gave his white tail an extra little switch as he slipped over the side of the wheelbarrow and began to run quietly between the rows of lettuce. His whiskers twitched as he went along, faster and faster. This time he would surely make it. Mr. McGregor looked up and saw the tips of Peter's brown ears going by. He threw down his hoe and started to run after him. But Peter saw that the gate was close at hand, and faster his brown feet went. Through the garden, across the grass, through the open gate, and down the lane, right into the woods that would lead him home. Just before he turned into his own little grove of fir trees, he looked back to the garden. Mr. McGregor was hanging up the little blue coat with the shining buttons on the top of a hoe to use as a scarecrow, and he had tied on the little shoes Peter had left behind. Peter saw a sparrow sitting on the toe of each one as he crept gently by. Finally, he reached home. He was so tired that he flopped down on the cool dirt floor of the little house in the fir tree and closed his eyes. His mother was cooking supper. She looked over at him, shaking her gray head. "What a tired little rabbit he is," she said. "And he has lost his beautiful new coat and his new shoes. That's the 4th time this month. Oh, Peter, Peter, you are such a naughty little rabbit. There will be no supper for you tonight." So Peter went to bed with nothing for supper but chamomile tea. But Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, the good little rabbits who had done what their mother had told them, they had a big bowl of milk for supper. And for dessert, they had delicious blackberries and cream. Everybody likes to go hopping about, but sometimes we do it too much, like Christopher Robin. Christopher Robin goes hoppity, 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 hop. Whenever I tell him politely to stop it, he says he can't possibly stop. If he stopped hopping, he couldn't go anywhere. Poor little Christopher couldn't go anywhere. That's why he always goes hoppity, 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 hop. Hoppity, 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 hop. Have you ever lost something you liked a lot? Well, then you know how I feel. Has anybody seen my mouse? I opened his box for half a minute just to make sure he was really in it. And while I was looking, he jumped outside. I tried to catch him, I tried. I think he's somewhere about the house. Has anyone seen my mouse? Uncle John, have you seen my mouse? Just a small sort of mouse, a dear little brown one. He came from the country, he wasn't a town one. So he'll feel all lonely in a London street. Why, what could he possibly find to eat? He must be somewhere. I'll ask Aunt Rose. Have you seen a mouse with a waffly nose? Oh, somewhere about. He's just got out. Hasn't anybody seen my mouse? When I go down to the zoo, I see the strangest animals, and I always have a good time. What I like to do best is feed the elephants. That's fun. There are lions and roaring tigers and enormous camels and things. There are buffalo bisons and a great big bear with wings. There's a sort of a tiny hippopotamus and a tiny rhinoceros too. But I gave buns to the elephant when I went down to the zoo. There are badgers and bidgers and blodgers and a superintendent's house. There are masses of goats and a polar and different kinds of mouse. And I think there's a sort of a something which is called a wallaboo. But I gave buns to the elephant when I went down to the zoo. If you try to talk to the bison, he never quite understands. You can't shake hands with a Mingo. He doesn't like shaking hands. And lions and roaring tigers hate saying, "How do you do?" But I gave buns to the elephant when I went down to the zoo. Did you ever wish that you had a tail? Like a lion, or an elephant, or a whale, or a quail? A lion has a tail, and a very fine tail, and so has an elephant, and so has a whale, and so has a crocodile, and so has a quail. They've all got tails but me. If I had a sixpence, I would buy one. I'd say to the shopman, "Let me try one." I'd say to the elephant, "This is my one." They'd all come round to see. Then I'd say to the lion, why, you've got a tail, and so has the elephant, and so has the whale. And look, there's a crocodile, he's got a tail. You've all got tails like me.
I wonder what it's like to be a birdie singing in a tree. I wonder how you'd feel if you could only stand around and moo. I spend all day in meadows eating clover, then home I go to give some milk when day is over. A dog must have some wondrous times. He runs and jumps and almost climbs. I wish that I could do that too, but all I do is stand and moo. Yes, those are the exact words of Clara the curious cow. Oh, she was a good cow and gave the richest milk, but she was still unhappy because she thought all the other barnyard animals had more fun than she. Well, one night, after a very dull day, she was feeling so discontented when suddenly a little elf appeared and sang this song. You think your life is not so much, that others have more fun and such. A dog is what you're going to be for just one day, then you will see. And with that, he vanished. And sure enough, the next morning, Clara was a dog instead of a cow. And Farmer Brown called her to herd the sheep out into the pasture. Oh, that was fun. There were big sheep, baa, and little sheep, baa, and every so often a baby sheep. Well, things were going along beautifully when suddenly a silly old wolf came running out of the forest looking for something to eat. Clara saw him and started to bark. The sheep began to baa, and the wolf growled and growled, and there was so much noise and confusion that the wolf decided, well, there must be an easier way to get a breakfast, and he ran off into the forest. Oh, it was a rough day for Clara, and that night she was very tired. A dog's life isn't what I'd planned. It's much too hard for me to stand. I think I'll wish for something new, because I still don't want to move. Clara had just finished her unhappy song when the elf again appeared. I warned you that one day would be enough of this for you to see, but you will know tomorrow when you wake up as a little hen. And Clara fell asleep. So the next morning, just as she had been told, Clara woke up as a chicken. I'm glad that I am now a hen, for I shall be more happy then. I'd rather lay an egg or two than only stand around and moo. I'll run and scratch and sing with glee, because a hen I'm glad to be. Now here is something I can do as well as stand around and moo. And Clara ran off, cackling to join the other barnyard animals. When she was contented, she'd go. And when she laid an egg, she'd go. She heard the rooster, the ducks, the turkeys, the horse, and the pigs. Oh, life was such fun now, but suddenly Clara saw a fox sneaking into the barnyard. Well, she started to cackle. The ducks quacked. The horse whinnied. And the pigs squealed. And all of them made such a noise that finally the fox ran off, holding his ears. By this time, Clara was so disappointed at what the other animals had to go through that she decided forever it was much, much nicer just to be a cow and give good milk and have nothing to do but sing her little song. I was a very curious cow. I find I'm not so curious now. I'll stick to things that I can do as well as stand around and moo. So take my word and do what you are best for. Each has his task in life to do and leave the rest for when it comes to useful things. A cow finds out it can't use wings. For milk and cream and butter too, you say hooray. And I say, moo. Do you remember your last birthday? It was fun, wasn't it? The birthday party, the cake with the candles, and best of all, the presents. Well, once there was a boy named Bobby who awoke on his birthday morning, and the first thing his mother said was, "Bobby, tell us what you want for your birthday." Imagine that. He could have anything he wanted. Well, Bobby thought for a moment, took a deep breath, and said, "I want a pony, a cart, and a dog named Chip, a parrot, a drum, and an airplane trip, a baseball bat, and a catcher's mitt, a three-wheel bike, and a first aid kit, and a rector set, and a rabbit to pet, a rubber mouse, and a sailor blouse, and so many, 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 many toys that they'd fill up a house." But his mother said, "Now, Bobby, you can't have all those things, but you may have 3 presents. Any 3 you want." "Oh, that's great," said Bobby. "I'll go to the store right now and pick them out." "Can I come too?" asked his little sister Betty. "No," said Bobby, "you can't. It's my birthday and you can't come." No sooner were the words out of his mouth than Bobby wished he hadn't said them. He could see that Betty felt very badly. She sat down at her little toy piano and began to play a very sad little song. "Bobby," said his mother, "I think it would be very nice if you took Betty with you." "Aw, gee," said Bobby, "why do I always have to take her along? Just 'cause I'm 5 and just 'cause she's 3, wherever I go, she goes with me. Oh, who takes care of sister, 'cause my sister's only 3? It's not my mother, it's not my father, it's me, me, me. When I am playing leapfrog, who leaps along with me? It's not my mother, it's not my father, it's sister, age 3. Oh, she loves me in the springtime and she loves me in the fall. But when I have a birthday, she loves me best of all. She loves me in the winter and in the summer too. In fact, she loves me so darn much I don't know what to do. Oh, who takes care of sister, 'cause my sister's only 3? It's not my mother, it's not my father, it's me, me, me. It's me, Bobby, age 5. Well, Bobby finally agreed to take Betty to the store. So she ran to get her coat, and she ran so fast she didn't look where she was going, and she tripped over her favorite toy, the little piano, and she broke it all to pieces, and she began to cry. "Oh, please don't cry," said Bobby. "Come on, we'll go to the store together and have some fun." So Betty dried her eyes and followed Bobby into the street. When they came to the store, they looked at all the wonderful toys, and the first thing Bobby saw that he wanted was a great big airplane. Oh, an airplane is a wonderful thing, he thought. It can fly up high and do tricks in the sky. It can fly on its belly or back. And I'm sure I can be a Superman with a plane painted purple and black. Look at me, gee, I'm flying, I'm flying. Look, I'm flying and I feel grand. Look at me, gee, wee, I'm flying and I guess I won't ever land. "Well, shall I wrap up the airplane for you?" asked the salesman. And Bobby said, "Oh, yes, sir. That's my first present, and I can have 2 more. Then he turned to Betty and said, "This sure is going to be my happiest birthday." But Betty wasn't listening. I guess she was still thinking about that little piano she broke. "Come over here, Bobby," said the salesman. "I have a wonderful present for you." And he showed Bobby a remarkable French doll, which immediately began to sing. "My name is Pierre, and I come from Paris. If you're looking for something terrific, take me. I can sing, I can dance. I've got 2 pair of pants. I'm Pierre, and I come from Paris. That's me." "That's a mighty fine present for you," Betty said. "You ought to take it." "Oh, not me," Bobby replied. "I'm a boy, and boys don't play with dolls." So the man put the French doll back on the shelf, and Betty looked sadder than ever. Just then Bobby heard, and racing along the counter came a beautiful red fire engine. It had ladders and hooks and a wonderful siren and things that you need when a fire is a-firin'. A real rubber hose and a motor that goes and other contraptions too numerous to mention, all in this wonderful fire engine. "Oh, I want the fire engine," cried Bobby. "I want it." "Very well," said the man. "But that makes 2 presents. Now you may have just 1 more." Bobby turned to his sister. "Do you like my fire engine?" he asked. "Oh, it's all right," said Betty. "All right?" cried Bobby. "It's wonderful." Then he and Betty looked at bicycles and building blocks and games and modeling clay, and finally they came to the mechanical toys. They were all wound up and marching around a table. Suddenly, a big brown mechanical cow smiled at them and said, "Moo." "Hello," said Bobby. "How do you do?" said Betty. "Moo," said the cow. "I am such a friendly cow, but I really don't see how I could ever leave my other friends and go with you. There's the pig and duck and horse, all mechanical, of course, who would have to come along before I'd go with you. Yes, they'd have to come with me, so unless you can agree, we will have to say goodbye, 'cause I can't go with you." "Well," said Bobby, "then we'll have to find something else." And he began to think, now what shall my last present be? It must be something special to make this the happiest birthday in the world. And suddenly he saw it. An Indian set with a real bow and arrow and an Indian tom-tom and the suit of an Indian chief. Oh, it was so wonderful that just looking at it made Bobby begin to dream. In the land of the Iroquois Indians, there lived a famous warrior. He could lick 1,000 braves at a time and ask, are there any Moria? A most remarkable Indian, no enemy deceived him. He could imitate a wolf on the prowl, and even the wolves believed him. He stood over 6 feet tall. Woo! He was the bravest brave of all. Woo! When he went on the warpath, all his enemies would shiver. He'd charge on them with a tomahawk and chase them in the river. So hail, Big Chief Bobby, over 6 feet tall, the roughest, toughest, fightingest brave, the bravest brave of all. Bobby turned to his sister and said, "Isn't the Indian set wonderful?" But when he looked around, Betty wasn't there. She had disappeared. Oh, Bobby looked everywhere but couldn't find her. The salesman looked too, but he couldn't find her. So they called the manager. But the manager couldn't find her, and they called the policeman on the corner. But the policeman couldn't find her. Soon everyone was searching high and low for Betty. Have you seen a little girl with a little coat and a little hat? She was standing here a little while ago, 3 years old and 3 feet high, with a button nose and 2 blue eyes. If you see her, won't you let us know? Betty, where, oh, where is Betty? If you see her, won't you let us know? Then, just as they began to get worried, they heard a familiar sound. And there, hidden in a corner of the store, playing a piano, just like the one she had broken, was his sister Betty. And she looked very happy and very pretty. Bobby took her in his arms and said, "Oh, gee, Betty, I was afraid you were lost." "Why, that's silly," she said. "I was just waiting for you. Are you going to take the Indian set?" "No," said Bobby finally. "It's not a real Indian set. It's just a toy. I'd rather have a piano like the one you're playing. Then we can play together, like this." Betty smiled at him and said, "Thank you, Bobby," because she knew he was buying the present for her. Later, I asked Bobby why he really bought the piano for his sister. And he said, "You see, I wanted this to be the happiest birthday in the whole world. And you can't really be happy unless the people around you are happy too." That's what Bobby told me. And you know something? I think he's right. Don't you? Happy, happy birthday, happy holiday. Come and join the party, everyone is gay. When you blow the candles to make your wish come true, all of us are wishing happiness to you. All of us are wishing happiness to you. Once there was a cranky old house. Its floors creaked, its window panes rattled, its roof leaked, its water pipes prattled, and its lawn was covered with weeds.
Nobody lived in Cranky Old House until one day a car drove up. Janie, Ronnie, and their mother and father stepped out of the car. They were moving into Cranky Old House. "I don't like this house," said Janie. "I don't like this house either," said Ronnie. "It's a cranky, danky, ranky old house." Cranky Old House muttered,
"Cranky, danky, ranky old house, am I? They'll soon see just how cranky I can be."
Father turned the knob of the front door, but it would not open. He pushed and he thumped, but the door would not budge. Cranky Old House growled,
"He can raise a mighty tin, but I'll never let him in."
Father pushed and thumped so much that at last he pushed the door open wide. Oh, Cranky Old House was furious. He rattled his windows and shook all the floors. He heaved his roof and banged all the doors. "Let's go in," said Father. Inside they saw the tables, the chairs, the beds, the dishes, the rugs, and the clothes strewn helter-skelter all over the house, just as the moving men had left them. "Oh, my, what a mess," cried Mother. "Well, let's get to work," said Father. So Janie, Ronnie, and Father pulled and tugged till they laid the parlor rug. The chairs and tables they lifted into place. They rolled the beds into the right space, and they hung their clothes in the closet. Then Janie and Ronnie ran into the kitchen where their mother was dusting off the table. "How do you like our new kitchen table?" Mother asked. "Oh, it's beautiful," cried Janie.
"Beautiful, is it? I'll fix that. Grum, grum, grum. Kitchen ceiling, down you come."
"Mother, Janie, run!" shouted Ronnie. "The ceiling is falling down!" And they dashed out of the kitchen just in time. The kitchen ceiling crashed to the floor in 1,000 little pieces. "Oh, my beautiful new kitchen table," sighed Mother. "It's ruined."
"Oh, oh, oh. Now will you let me alone? Never, never, never will I be your new home."
The kitchen was a mess. Father said, "I must get the plaster to fix that ceiling." Early next morning, the doorbell rang. Ronnie opened the door. A man stood outside. He carried a ladder in one hand and a large bag of plaster in the other. It was the plaster, come to fix the kitchen ceiling. Ronnie and Janie watched the plaster work. And while he worked, he sang. "On my board I mix my plaster, clister, claster, clister, claster. I can work a little faster, for I am the plaster master. With my trowel I spread and smear, plaster there, plaster here, smooth it down and paint it white. That makes ceilings clean and bright." In a little while, the plaster put up a new ceiling. Then he fixed the ceilings in all the other rooms. Cranky Old House could never again drop ceilings to the floor. He groaned and moaned.
"It looks like they've tricked me, but they haven't licked me."
That night, Janie turned on the faucet in the bathroom to take a bath. The water gushed out, but it was brown and rusty. "Oh, my," cried Janie, "I can't bathe in that dirty water."
"Oh, oh, oh. Soon they'll know that I won't stop until they go."
Father said, "I must get the plumber to fix those pipes." Early next morning, the doorbell rang again, and Janie opened the door. A man stood outside. He carried some pipes in one hand and a bag of tools in the other. It was the plumber,
come to fix the bathtub pipes. Janie and Ronnie watched the plumber work, and while he worked, he sang, "With my wrench I tear away rusty pipes too old to stay. Screechy scrapes, screechy scrapes, musty, dusty, rusty pipes. With my wrench I screw in tight, shining pipes, new and bright. Then the water gushes out, clean and bubbly from the spout. Clean and bubbly from the spout." By the end of the day, he had taken out all the rusty pipes and put in new pipes. Cranky old house could never again pour out rusty brown water in the tub. Cranky old house growled and howled.
"I'll shake and I'll pout until they move out."
That night it was very, very cold, and Mother said, "Brrr, I'm chilly. It would be nice to have a fire in the fireplace." "Well, that's a good idea," said Father. "I'll build a fire right now." So Father kneeled down onto the floor and crumbled some paper and then some more. He laid on the kindling, some here and some there, and placed a few logs with the greatest of care. Then he lighted the fire with a match. The flames blazed up. The wood snapped and crackled, but the smoke did not go up the chimney. It poured into the living room. It poured into the dining room, into the sun parlor, and into the kitchen. It curled up the stairs into the bedroom. The smoke made Father and Mother cough and choke. It made Ronnie and Janie cough and choke. Father stumbled into the kitchen and filled a pail with water. He groped back into the living room and splashed the water on the fire. The fire sizzled and fizzled, then out it went.
"Oh, oh, 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 I'll smoke them out, I'll choke them out, I'll freeze them and I'll wheeze them out."
Janie, Ronnie, Mother, and Father ran to open the windows and let the smoke out. The cold wind blew into the house. They shivered and quivered in the cold. But when all the smoke had cleared out, they closed the windows. The walls were black with smoke smudge. "Well, that settles it," said Father. "I'm going to have this whole house fixed for once and for all." So early next morning, the doorbell rang. In came the chimney sweep, carrying some long black brushes. In came the carpenter, carrying a box of tools and some planks of wood. In came the painter, carrying cans of paint and some brushes.
Gosh, oh gee, what will they do to me?
The chimney sweep climbed up the roof with his long black brushes. As he swept and brushed and scrubbed, he sang, "I'm called the chimney sweep because I sweep the chimney, and up the roof I creep to do my work by Jimny. Then with my brush I scrub and clean away the grime, the dirty soot I rub, and down the roof I climb." Never, never again would smoke pour into the living room and smudge the walls. The carpenter tore up all the creaky, squeaky old floors and nailed down new floors. He tore off all the old shingles of the leaky roof and nailed down new shingles. And he fixed the rattly old windows and the creaky old doors. And as he worked, he sang, "Ziz-a-zud, ziz-a-zud. That's the way I saw my wood. Rap-a-rails, rap-a-rails. That's the way I hammer nails. Ziz-a-zud, ziz-a-zud. saw and saw and saw the wood. That's the way I saw my wood. Rap-a-rails, rap-a-rails, hammer, hammer, hammer nails. That's the way I hammer nails. Never again would the floor squeak or the roof leak. Never again would the windows rattle or the doors creak. The painter mixed his paints in the paint cans. Then he painted the doors and the walls inside, and the porch and the walls outside. And as he worked, he sang, I can paint a house, I can, for I am the painter man. I stir up paints of every hue, yellow, green, and red, and blue. Watch me paint the parlor walls, kitchen, bedroom, and the halls. I brush and dab and stain and smear, blue paint there, red paint here. Never had cranky old house looked so shiny and new.
Oh, what a shame. I'll never be the same.
I like this house now, said Janie. Oh, I like this house too, said Ronnie.
So they like me now. Well, maybe they're right. Maybe it's better to be happy and bright.
Cranky old house puffed with pride. And never, never again did cranky old house's ceilings drop. Never again was the water rusty, and never, never again did the smoke pour into the living room. The roof never leaked, and the windows never rattled. For cranky old house was now a happy new house. Now close your eyes and try to imagine the most beautiful day you've ever seen. The greenest grass and the singingest birds and the shiningest sun. And then imagine me there, walking along, playing a little tin whistle, just as happy as can be. Of course, this was some time ago, but I remember it well. Oh, I was so happy that I was running and jumping and playing just for the fun of it, when all of a sudden I stepped into a big hole and fell kerplunk, right to the bottom. Well, I picked myself up, and I was in a long tunnel. Way ahead, I could see some light, so I started towards it. Finally, I reached the end, and I peeked out. I saw a strange land. My, but it was strange. Everything was painted instead of being real, and it looked just like a page out of a storybook. All the trees and flowers and grass were painted. And way up high on a painted cliff was a big painted castle. And it was all hushed and still, like your room at night after you've gone to sleep. Well, there must be someone here, I thought, even if they're only painted. So I sang out, hello, 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 is anybody here? Well, all of a sudden, a lot of tiny little painted animals popped up from behind logs and bushes and rocks and trees. There were rabbits and bluebirds and chipmunks and squirrels and turtles and foxes and robin redbreasts and even a little baby fawn. Oh, they were such nice little painted animals, and I wanted to make friends with them. So I took my little tin whistle and I started to play a tune for them, like this. No music?
No music.
Can't I sing if I want to?
Sing not. We're not allowed.
singing.
Well, can I dance then?
No, it's forbidden.
It's forbidden.
Ah, but that's terrible.
It's a lie.
Well, let me tell you, Mr. Squirrel, that's a terrible law. I'll sing and dance whene'er I will. No law on earth can keep me still. hey! Oh, hey, don't run away. Don't be frightened, please. Oh, they ran away.
Young man.
Oh, hello, Mr. Wise Old Owl. I'm glad you stayed.
Young man, there is such a law in our unfortunate country. Our king forbids us to sing and dance.
Where does this king live?
In yonder castle, but none can reach him.
Well, trust in me, my honored friend. I'll bring your sadness to an end. And playing a bold tune on my tin whistle, I started for the castle. And I ran and I ran and I ran till I reached the castle wall. And I jumped over the wall with a mighty jump. And I shinnied up a turret and climbed a rain spout till I came to a huge window. And I looked in, and what do you think I saw? It was the throne room of the castle. And sitting on the throne was a little mouse with big ears. But I knew at once that he was the king, because on his head was the biggest crown you'd ever seen. Yes, he was the king, all right, but he was the saddest, unhappiest king you can imagine. My, but he was sad. I jumped down into the room and walked over to him. Hello.
Who are you? How dare you? What are you doing here?
Oh, I'm just a stranger. Come a-visiting. Why are you so sad?
I'm not sad.
Oh, yes, you are.
I am not.
You are so.
I'm
You are.
I'm lonesome.
Well, you deserve to be lonesome. Lonesome's too good for you. Passing a law like that, not letting people sing or dance or make music. You ought to be ashamed of yourself.
I had a...
You did not.
I did. A king's got to do everything his subjects do, see? Only better. Well, I can't sing and I can't dance. So there had to be a law. I had to.
Oh, you can so sing and dance. Anybody can. Of course, anybody who's cranky and gloomy and grumpy, they can't. But anybody who's happy and smiley and cheerful, they can. Go on, try it. Try being happy, just for a minute. If you worry, if you bother your head,
I do.
it won't help you, it will hurt you instead.
It will?
Grouchers, groaners, cranks, and moaners, they're so unfair. If you can't be gay and merry, lock yourself in solitary. Though it hurts you, be a pleasanter guy. You may even learn to like it if you give it a try. You could laugh and sing and dance as gaily as an elf. But don't expect to get much help if you don't help yourself. Will you try?
Will you show me?
I'll show you.
I'll try.
Good. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. La 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 la. You see?
See? Look at me. I'm dancing.
Yes, he was dancing. We danced our way through the painted palace and out into the painted street and into the painted town. And all the little people were so happy that they started to dance too. And nobody there was ever sad again. Which all goes to show that anyone can do almost anything if he keeps trying. And is gay and cheerful about it. And don't forget, so can you.